Right, we have new Road 5 Michelins. Now, but let's have a bit of a chat about new tyres. And that's whether you're getting a brand new bike or even just a new set of hoops for your used bike. Now, anybody who's been riding a long while already knows this. So this is for the more inexperienced amongst us in relation to riding bikes. One thing we need to consider is when you've got new tyres, they're shiny, and they're not shiny because they're new. Well, they are, but it's not because they're shiny and new. Yes, they are. But what I'm saying is there's a reason that they're shiny, and it's because, how cool is that number plate? It's because, for those that don't know, and a lot of people will, but some won't, it's because they are put into a mould, and to get them out of the mould they need a release agent, and the release agent of course is shiny, and it's like a slippy, and what it does is allows the tyre to be pulled out of the mould a lot easier. Now, riding around on a tyre covered in slippy as a tench for the fishermen amongst us, tyre, it's gonna be pretty bloody dangerous. So you've got to spend a bit of time burning off the release agent. That slippiness is dangerous as hell, and I'm sure a long time ago I recall selling a new blade, or somebody did, to a gentleman at Shipley out of the shop, and despite all the warnings he set off and gave it a slight more of a handful than you might normally, with exuberance from buying a new bike. It wasn't a lot, he didn't think, bollocks, I'm going to give it a handful and pop a wheelie down the road, but he just gave it a little bit too much. Just turning out of the car park on a Saltaire road heading towards Shipley, and the bike just flew out from underneath him, and that was a 4 miles old Fireblade, and of course then he had the walk of shame pushing it back, where he picked it up about 2 weeks later with new panels. And that's what you're going to look for. These tyres will be absolutely as slippy as a tench. So to scrub them in, realistically, for me, I mean it depends on the rider, but for me I'm looking at 100 k's, maybe 150 before I'm happy that they're scrubbed in. Now these are the new Michelin Road 5s, I'm very excited, and I had a chat with Morels. Now we're talking about shelf life on tyres. Now as I've explained to some of you already, or some of you might be aware, this bike's been stood before I got it. It's only done about 500 or 600 kilometres in 7 years. The tyres, I looked on the receipt, and the tyres, the front was replaced in 2013. Oh Jesus, and that was 7 years ago. Now tyres have got a shelf life whereby they go off. Bill at Morels reckons 5 years, and yeah, 5 to 7. He just said 5. You can't argue with it. Now that's if you've got a tyre supplier who's proper job, he'll be rotating his stock and they'll be selling stuff well within time. But if they've been sat on a bike and they're not kept out of sunlight, or they're kept in a shed where moisture, or they dry out, this is Australia, remember. Now this bike, I couldn't quite weigh it up, felt like shit. it's just not, I've not been able to settle with it for 3 weeks. Not like shit, no, but if you're a motorcyclist, every one of us knows that when it feels right, you feel at one with your bike, and I've just not been able to settle with it. I've not felt at one with it yet, and some of it's down to just to me transitioning from the GS, but some of it just you know, I've been riding long enough to know that after 3 weeks, 3.5, 4 weeks of ownership, I should be at one with this bike. And luckily, actually, I am, and that's why I recognised that it didn't feel quite right. And it was down to the tyres. They were shagged, even though plenty of legal tread. They were just too old. We looked at the front tyre just now that was being taken off, and I'd not looked at it because I wasn't 100% sure what date to look at. It's a Pirelli, and there's codes on them, and it said 1110. Now that's apparently the 10, of course, is the year, so it's a 10-year-old tyre. It had been stocked for 3, which is fine. It had been in stock or produced in 2010. It had been stocked for 3 and sold with 4 years use, which is about right. Hey, some people can get 4 years out of a tyre. I certainly can't. I used to go through them in a weekend when I wasn't paying for them. But this situation there is quite an interesting scenario when you're buying a used bike. Be aware that despite legal tread, get on the internet. We've got the internet nowadays. Look at how to age your tyre, i.e. count. It's like counting rings on a bloody tree, isn't it? There's codes on your tyre. You'll be able to find out what year your tyre was manufactured. And if it's over a certain age, you need to be negotiating new tyres and considering that with your price if you're buying a used bike. Don't just rely on tread. And I'll be honest, I did. I knew I needed a rear. It was scalloped. It was legal, but the tyre was scalloped. It had a Road 5 on, a Road 2, sorry. It's a Pilot 2 on the back, but it was scalloped. Pilot 2 are a few-year-old bike tyres now, so that was definitely worth considering. But if you're buying a used bike, even if it's got legal tread and it doesn't look bad, get the codes, check the age of the tyre. And you know what, if it's 5 years old or more, you really do need to be negotiating new tyres, even 4 years, because they're going to be knackered. And I've not felt right on these tyres until, and I knew something wasn't quite right, and I knew the tyres were coming, and I was reserving judgment on this bike until I got my Road 5 on, and I've just done that. Obviously I'm bimbling at the moment because, as I said, I've got shiny tyres. But do keep that in mind. You've got codes on your tyres that will tell you how old they are. That's my rider guider advice for buying a used bike. And that's not defensive riding, it's defending your wallet. You're welcome. Anyhow, I hope you're all well. I've learned something there a little bit, and I knew a little bit about my tyres and how to scrub them in, how to be wary, but them codes, some people will obviously know that, but just remember it, keep it in mind, and know how old your tyres are. So there you go.